Hi everyone, I hope you can see me and hear me. Welcome to the live stream. I can see that some of you are already saying hello to all of you. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes before I get into the topic so that we can all log on and gather. Hi Lemmy, hey Cynthia, KX, hello. It's nice to see you guys. I love to see where you're from. It's really fun to know. For those of you who maybe don't know me, I'm Malin. I think most of you probably do if you've tuned into this live. Hi, Lindsay. Nice to see you. Christina, Sophia, the Jacqueline, Karen. Hey. Super nice to see you all. So first of all, I want to thank Blackmagic Design for making this live stream possible and more fun by providing us with an awesome camera that we're using for this angle. It's a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K. We use it pretty much for all of our videos now. And we're also using a live stream switcher of theirs called the ATEM Mini Pro, which makes it easy for us to switch up angles and images in our live streaming. So thanks to them. And today we're going to talk about balancing vegan meals. And there's sort of two sides to this, I think. There's like taste, texture, how the food tastes and feels. And then there's nutrition, of course. So I'm going to touch on both of these. And I'm going to try and answer some questions when and if I can. I've also this time put on live chat, which I don't think I did in my last live stream. And I realized I was a bit behind on the comments last time, but there were so many of you and I couldn't keep up. But it's lovely to have so many of you here. I can see it's moving on already. And it's also really lovely to see you guys chatting to each other in the chat. So please do that. Feel free. Enjoy. We're all here to enjoy being together, right? So I have some notes on my phone, and I'm going to have to refer to them at times. But let's start talking about balancing vegan meals. So for me, food is a lot about enjoyment, about flavor, experience, just as much as it is about fuel or nutrition. I think we can often get very stuck in talking about food as just fuel or nutrition, but it's an amalgamation of many things, and that's cool. And I also want to say to any of you that feel triggered from speaking about nutrition, or we're not really going to talk about rules, but like guidelines or ideas of how you can combine foods or whatever, then maybe this live stream isn't for you. We will talk about nutrition, some guidelines and things like that. So maybe go check out one of my other videos if that's something that you don't feel comfortable with, or if it doesn't make you feel good. But first of all, let's talk about flavor. I think that's a good place to start when talking about balancing vegan meals. So there are 5 tastes, that we can feel in our mouths. And I think Rob has a picture of a human tongue, which shows you where on the tongue that we feel these different tastes. So there's sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, which hasn't always been recognized and by Western scientists, let's say. I think this idea of umami came out of Japan. And I'm glad it did, because it's pretty wonderful. It's a wonderful idea. I see you guys chatting. That's awesome. Someone's asking also, will the live stream be saved? And yes, it will. Moving on. So there are these 5 tastes. And when it comes to taste, it's what we want to think about is like balancing these 5 tastes. So when it comes to sweet can be obviously fruit or dried fruit or sugar, sweeteners like maple syrup, agave syrup, but there's also sweetness in vegetables. For example, in carrots and pumpkin, beetroot. I don't know, did I have other ideas, a sweet potato. So it doesn't have to be like sugar, which I think is the first thing we think about when we think sweet. So we can use all of these things to bring on sweet in a dish. And when it comes to salty, obviously there's salt, but we also have soy sauce, miso paste. We have things like olives and capers that have been preserved in a salty liquid that, of course, brings this like salty, savory flavor to food. And then we have bitter. And bitter, I think, is one of these things that we don't eat so much anymore. But it does exist in things like dark leafy greens, rocket or arugula, as you call it as well, and also in chocolate and cocoa powder. And it's not something that we maybe enjoy so much on its own. But we use to eat much more bitter greens, for example. It's really funny when we've been out foraging with a friend of ours, Agata. She's shown us so many green vegetables that you can pick wild out in nature. And they're so much more bitter than the salad leaves that we eat today. So I think, humans used to eat a lot more bitter than we do, but it's definitely good for you. And it's also cool in combination with other flavors. If we don't enjoy them on their own. I don't, for example, sit and eat just rocket or arugula on its own. I find it like peppery, sharp, and bitter, but it's super nice in a salad where you combine it with other things like sweet, salty, sour. And I guess that brings us to sour, which I probably should have talked about before bitter. And when it comes to sour, obviously we have our vinegars. There are so many different vinegars: balsamic, apple cider, white wine, red wine, champagne, if you're feeling fancy, and the list goes on. And then obviously there's citrus. There we have lemons and limes, and there are many different varieties of them depending on where you are in the world. And we obviously have things like oranges and clementines, mandarins, things like that, where you have that both sour and sweet, which is really cool in dressings. And with sour, I always think of them as like something that freshens something up or livens things up, or even like brings out other flavors. So if you make a soup, for example, and you feel it's a bit flat, but you've added like enough salt and other spices, then adding some vinegar or citrus can really bring out those other flavors. So that's a nice thing to think about when you're cooking, that if you feel like something's missing, often it's like that acidity. And then that brings us to umami, which is the one that's the most difficult to like explain, because it's got something to do with like richness, depth of flavor, roundness, and like that savory round flavor that a lot of people associate with meat. But it really doesn't need to be meat. And obviously I'm here to talk about vegan cooking. And basically, to be a little bit like specific about it, it refers to like an amino acid that's called glutamate. Or glutamate, we say in Swedish, I think. And this exists in certain foods like tomatoes and seaweed, mushrooms, things like that. And these are the kinds of foods that bring this kind of umami to your cooking as well. I think especially sun-dried tomatoes gives this richness, depth of flavor. Dried mushrooms are really great for this. And when you cook with dried mushrooms, you soak them in hot water before you cook with them. And that liquid that you get from soaking the mushrooms is equally awesome to use in your cooking. So don't waste that. Don't just take the mushrooms, but use that liquid as well. But also fresh mushrooms bring this like umami flavor. And there's miso paste and soy sauce, which both bring this flavor profile as well. And I also think that nutritional yeast should go in this category because it's got that savory, earthy roundness to it. And combined with other things, I think it's really great. And some people, I think, talk about umami as it's not like one flavor almost. It's like a combination of things. There's like a little bit of sweet, a little bit of acidity, and that savory, salty flavor. So those are the 5 tastes that we can play around with, and you can use them in different combinations. I mean, maybe you won't be bringing all of them to life in every dish, but usually 2, 3, 4 of them will come together and make something delicious. So these are good things to think about, especially if you're making dressings. You probably want to have at least 4 or 5 of these tastes in there. See, there's a lot of action happening here. I just want to check in. Nice to see you all. I will continue. So now we've talked a little bit about flavor, and it's really important to enjoy your food, to play around with flavor, and especially for new vegans, this might be a little tricky and a little new because you are removing some things from your diet that you're used to seasoning in certain ways and that are bringing certain flavors to your meals. And this is somewhere you might need to relearn a few things and play around with ingredients. And that goes the same way for textures, especially chewy texture, or chewy like firm texture, which is something that you often get from meat. And in vegan food, you can definitely get this. I like tempeh and tofu over like substitute meat products, but I do like those as well. I enjoy cooking with them also, but I think you can get this kind of more chewy, firm texture also from tofu and tempeh. So I want to say that first. And it's really nice also if you make a marinade, thinking of all those 5 tastes and actually submerging that tofu and tempeh in there. So it really can draw in all those flavors, and then pan frying it or baking it in the oven will give it more of that chewy texture, especially if you use firm tofu for this. I guess that makes sense. But otherwise, for this chewy texture, meat replacements are great. And one that I think that's really captured this like meaty, chewy texture, I think, is actually from a Swedish brand. It's called Umf. I'm sure a few of you at least have tried it because I know it exists in England. I'm not sure about if you have it in America, but there you have so many other options that we don't get here. So just go out there and try some different things. Another thing that can give this chewy, meaty texture is seitan. It's made from vital wheat gluten. It sounds weird, but it works great if you cook it correctly. And you can also buy ready-made products made from seitan as well. And often in vegan meat substitutes, you will find that there's a combination of like soy protein with vital wheat gluten to achieve this chewy texture that we remember from eating meat. And other textures exist, of course. And the first one I put on my list is soft. And I think when I talk about soft foods, it's like I think about cooked foods, cooked veggies. And many of us probably grew up eating overcooked veggies. At least I did. I don't know, maybe it's a Swedish thing. You guys let me know. But then everything just turns like to mush and soft. But that can also be nice, like in mashed potatoes, or here in Sweden, we make root mash where, you know, you mix different root vegetables like sweet or rutabaga, I think I'm saying that right, with carrot and potato. You can do parsnips, you can do celeriac. There's so many things you can do. And also, what was I thinking? Anyway, I lost my train of thought. But like soft textures can be very flat on their own. If everything in your meal is soft, it's probably not going to be that exciting. So you need to mix it up with other textures. And the next one I want to mention is creamy. Creamy is a really nice texture, I think. And it's got that like silky smooth kind of thing going on. It makes me think of something that's quite rich. Obviously, there are vegan cream substitutes you could use. There's mayo. I would put them in this category. But again, making like hummus really well can give you that like creamy consistency. And other bean dips or other dips in general, or using like yogurt in your cooking, vegan yogurt like soy yogurt or oat yogurt or whatever you can find, coconut yogurt, or like vegan creme fraiche or sour cream can also bring that like creaminess to your food. And obviously with things like yogurt or creme fraiche, vegan versions of those will also give you some acidity, which can be really nice. Then that brings me to crunchy, and here we come to some of my favorite textures, and I think this is important. It's important to have some different textures in your food to make it exciting. And crunchy, what I think of first and foremost is like nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds make the perfect crunchy element to your food. Nice to toast them to really bring out their flavor. And if you don't toast your nuts and seeds, please start, because it makes a world of difference. Of course, it's great to eat them raw as well, but when you're cooking and want to, make a real standout dish, toasting your nuts and seeds will make a big difference. And like many of you know, I also like to toast them with flavorings. I call them my umami seeds, where I marinate them in a little bit of sweetener, some soy sauce, maybe some smoked paprika, and toast them till they're dried and toasted and yummy. And I sprinkle that on pretty much any meal. Obviously, if you want to eat them on sweet foods, you don't put the soy sauce and all that stuff on. You just toast them as they are. And for me, adding this kind of crunchy element brings a little bit of magic to your food. It's such an easy thing to do that just elevates it. And then we're moving on from crunchy to crispy. And when it comes to crispy, I think of veggies, I think of raw veggies, and they're great, aren't they? It's such a lovely texture as well. It makes for really great fresh dishes. And maybe we also associate this more with like spring, summer, early autumn, because in winter, at least, I think more of like hearty, warm, soft, creamy foods. But this is cool as well, that we have these seasons that bring out different things in our cooking. And a great tip for all of you who might have some wilting lettuce or celery or something in your fridge, if you submerge these, most veggies actually, even carrots, if you submerge them in water and put them in the fridge and wait a few hours, they will crisp up again. So don't throw your food if it's looking wilted before you try this trick, because it's really like a little piece of magic. And that's about all I have to say about texture and flavor. Just play around with these different elements that I've been talking about, because it will transform your cooking if you're struggling with finding the perfect synergy in your food and in your cooking. I like to think about these things when I'm making my recipes. And like I said, you don't need to use all of them all the time. It's the beauty in combining different ones that bring out the best in different ingredients. And also thinking of the seasonal element is pretty cool as well. What do we enjoy at different times of the year? But now that we've talked a little bit about flavor and texture, I wonder, are there any questions that I should answer before I move on to talking a little bit about nutrition? Have you seen any, Rob? Not so many questions. Cool. Then we're moving on, talking a little bit about nutrition and how to make balanced meal in a nutritious sense when it comes to vegan meals. And first of all, I want to say that not every meal you make needs to be like a perfectly balanced meal. Your body is really clever. It will work things out on its own. So don't sweat it too much about making like perfectly balanced meals. Of course, it's great to give your body the building blocks it needs, and I'm sure you will. But you don't need to do it, all the time, every component at every meal. I think it's over like 1 or 2 days. It's good to make sure that you've got a good variety of different foods and different food groups to make sure that your body can make use of all the building blocks. But I really want to stress this first, that don't worry too much about making perfectly balanced meal every time you go to the kitchen. Next, I want to just mention like whole foods and what whole food groups we have in a vegan diet. So we have grains, we have, and specifically whole grains, we have legumes, beans, lentils, peas, we have fruit, and we have vegetables, and we have nuts and seeds. These are sort of our 5 pillars in a vegan whole food diet. And I think it's great to center your way of eating around these groups, because that's how you get really great nutrition on a vegan diet, or when you eat as a vegan. And it's important, nutrition is important. I can't deny that, but it's not everything. I think you've understood that I'm trying to find some balance also between like enjoyment and nutrition. Anyways, centering your food around these 5 food groups is a pretty good idea. It allows you to have a good amount of vitamins and minerals, and you get your carbs, your protein, your fat. So you have your macronutrients and you have your micronutrients, and you get a good amount of them if you use a variety of these foods. And with that said, let them make up the most of your diet, and then you still have space for other things. You can still eat some meat replacements that you enjoy. I definitely love chocolate and crisps and all of these things. I think most of us do, and there's space in a balanced diet for all of it. But a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and more of the whole foods. And when it comes to choosing our foods as well, I think that variety is the spice of life. Enjoy the different veggies that we have. Enjoy the different grains that are available to us. Enjoy trying out different legumes, lentils, peas. There's so many different types of beans. And when it comes to veggies and fruit, I like to think about what's in season, and this will inform my choices. This is good for the environment. It's good to support our local farmers, of course, and this will make that easier for you. So it's nice to spend maybe a little bit of time just Googling seasonal foods in your local area, and just understanding like when what's happening where you are, and focusing your diet around that, or your choice of veggies around that. And that goes for fruit as well. Obviously in winter here where I am in the northern hemisphere, we have more root vegetables. We have like more hearty greens like kale, Brussels sprouts. And in the summer, we have more of an abundance of fresh veggies, and we have those more that like heat, like tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuces, and the list goes on. So this is what I like to think of when it comes to that. And nuts and seeds, there's again a great variety. So just go crazy, enjoy, do some exploring. And I wanted to say about whole grains as well, because I am gluten intolerant or sensitive to gluten, and there are grains that gluten sensitive people can eat. It's different if you have celiac disease. I just want to say this so that I don't give you different ideas, because then you are allergic and you can have more severe reactions. Then you need to buy certified oats, for example. But otherwise, oats are great if you're sensitive to gluten. Quinoa, buckwheat. What else do I eat? Millet. So there are some grains that you can eat. Sorghum, if you are gluten intolerant, and go for those. There is also nowadays like gluten-free options to couscous and all sorts of things. And also I wanted to mention, actually I'll come to that in a minute. So when it comes to like composing your plate or putting together your meal, there's a really great method I think that I learned in school a long time ago, and it's the plate method. I don't know if you've heard about this. But basically, all countries usually have guidelines when it comes to how to put together a healthy meal. And this plate method has been around for a long time. So I think Rob's put on a slide for you to see. I have 3 of these that I've borrowed from different sources. And usually you talk about it as you will fill about half of your plate with veggies. You'll fill a quarter of your plate with plant-based protein sources like beans and lentils and tofu, tempeh, meat substitutes. And you'll fill a quarter of your plate with grains, and ideally whole grains. So I think Rob's shown you the most simple one. We'll see if he can show you my second example, because this first one doesn't show one essential ingredient in a healthy diet so much, and that's including some healthy fats. So my second example has that included in there. And it's also got fruits in there. So this half of the plate that I'm talking about that should have like veggies, and veggies can also include fruits. So you got your fruits and veggies, your whole grains, and here you also see that, whole grain breads are great, whole grain pastas are also great. You don't have to just eat whole grains as in like cooked brown rice or cooked quinoa. You can also enjoy whole grains in the form of bread and pasta. And then you have your legumes. And then if I can see my third example, which is even more elaborate, you get some idea of what else you need to think about to make sure that you have a nutritionally adequate diet as a vegan. And here they are sort of, highlighting that we need some calcium-rich foods in our diet. And you can get calcium on a vegan diet from like dark leafy greens, broccoli. I think it's quite a lot in tahini, and also from tofu. But it's good to eat some fortified foods to really make sure that we get enough calcium. And fortified foods are usually plant milk alternatives, and not plant milks or milk alternatives. Vegan yogurts, things like that are often fortified. But I want to say this, at least here in Sweden, if you buy organic plant milks, they are not fortified. So for this reason, in our household, we don't buy the organic plant milks, because we like to be able to have this sort of fortified food in our diet. And then on the side of this plate that you see here, which otherwise looks quite a lot like the other ones I showed you, it has the half plate with veggies and fruits. You've got your quarter plate almost of whole grains, and your quarter plate of vegan protein. And then you have that little sliver of nuts and seeds, where obviously they're trying to point to that you need those healthy fats in your diet. And then on the side, you will see that there are some supplements. You have vitamin B12, which is something that all vegans need to supplement. It's not readily available really in vegan food, so we need to take a supplement. But again, that exists also in fortified foods like plant milks, plant yogurts. Also, some nutritional yeast is fortified with B12. You also have vitamin D, and I want to say this, that vitamin D is not just important for vegans, it's important for everyone, especially if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, or if you spend a lot of time indoors. You need to supplement vitamin D, at least in the winter, or if you spend a lot of time indoors. Then you can see there's a salt shaker in this picture. And I think what they're trying to refer to is the mineral iodine, which salt is often fortified with. Not all salts are fortified with iodine, though, so you might want to keep track of this. But iodine is really important. It's a really important mineral. It helps with our thyroid function, for example. And what was I going to say? Actually, iodine is also found in sea vegetables, in seaweed. So if you want to use salts that are not fortified with iodine, you might want to think about incorporating some sea vegetables into your diet on a daily basis. Not huge amounts, but a little bit. I think the need for iodine is quite small, but still it's important. Or you can take a supplement. Sometimes fortified foods are also fortified with iodine. So you can check your plant milk and see. And then I don't know what those other little bits in that circle are, but I think this is a pretty good way of thinking about your meals.
Calcium rich.
I said about that already. So Rob's reminding me about the calcium foods, but I think I covered that. So let's see. There are some questions here now. Louisa is wondering what supplement or food did I reinforce with for the pandemic? And I think what they said was that it's really important to have enough vitamin D. So I actually really made sure that I ate vitamin D tablets, especially because I live here in Sweden where it's pretty dark, like 90% of the year. No, I'm exaggerating, but I'm in the middle of winter and I'm feeling the darkness struggle, okay? Let's see. Any tips for making your greens and vegetables last longer? Take care of them when you come home. Like greens, for example, if you have a bag of greens or like a plastic carton, put like a little piece of cloth, or you can put some paper towel in there, and that will sort of soak up moisture, because those bags and packages of greens, they make a lot of moisture, and that's not good for the greens. They'll wilt. So put some paper or something in there. Otherwise, cut things up and put them in containers, airtight containers. Like I said a little bit earlier in this live stream, you can also keep things like lettuce in a bowl of water. It will make them stay crisp. And yeah, if you need to revive wilted vegetables, you can always put them in water in the fridge, and that will crisp them up. Lindsay is wondering what are some of my favorite grains. So I mentioned this already a little bit, what kind of grains I eat. She says she eats rice, barley, and quinoa often, and those are great. There's also like whole wheat kind of grains that I think people overlook, but I think this one called frike. I think I'm saying that right. You have whole grain Bulgur Wheat, which is really easy to cook. I used to eat this all the time when I moved away from home, because it's so easy to cook and it's really yummy. And yeah, just explore the shelf. Explore the shelf and see what's there and bring it home. Most grains cook pretty much in the same way, like 1 part grain to 2 parts water, cooking them until they've absorbed the water. And you can use most of them the way you would use rice, or good in salads. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Thank you for pointing out that what we saw there probably refers to omega-3, and that was actually something I was going to come to next on my list. So we're moving on with the agenda I came here with. I'm sorry if it got a little bit disjointed. I just wanted to make sure that I'm touching base with you and answering some questions. So now that we've looked at this plate method, I also want to say that, like, you don't have to lay things out. You probably understand this, but I just want to make that clear that you don't have to build your plate like this, where you put half veggies, a quarter this, a quarter that. You can still make burgers and sandwiches and your breakfast plate and get all of these nutrients. I just thought I'd show you some examples, and I'll see if Rob can first show you like a porridge bowl that I make pretty much every morning. And this doesn't sound like this kind of half plate veggies and fruits and this and that, but in a way you can more or less get to this kind of situation even in your porridge bowl. So obviously I have my oats as a base, and that's whole grains. So that's a good start. And then I top it with fruits, berries, any kind of fruit that's in season. Here I have pear. So that covers your like fruit and veggie section. Obviously, it's good to get some veggies in later on in the day. But it's fine to start with fruit and then come to the veggies later. And then here I have some peanut butter on mine and some milled flaxseed as well. So here the peanut butter definitely contains some plant protein, so that's good. And so does the flaxseed, and so does the oats actually, but I mean that's counting in a different category here. But we also have healthy fats from the milled flaxseed. Omega-3 is, or milled flaxseed is really great for omega-3. There are not that many omega-3 rich foods in a vegan diet, but flaxseed is one of them. And if I wanted to add some more protein to this bowl, I could sprinkle some other seeds on there. And again, that would add some more minerals and healthy fats. And then I usually pour some plant milk over my bowl of porridge, which would then, if I use the fortified plant milk, would count as like a calcium source as well. And I would get B12 and iodine and whatever else that milk is fortified with. So that's how you can think about your breakfast bowl, for example. And then if Rob can pull up, I've got a burger there as well. I can just show you how I'm thinking. So when you like doing a burger, you got your bun, and go for a whole grain bun. Then you've got your whole grains. The patty, you make it from beans, so you got your plant protein there. You can make it from soy mince or a mixture of the two. You can also include whole grains and beans in your patty, and that's awesome too. And then obviously go for veggies in your burger. I have a tomato relish here. I've got some lettuce, some tomatoes, some onion. And if you wanted to make sure that you get like a good amount of veggies, you can have a side salad with things like a burger, or if you're making a sandwich, unless you're going to fill it with lots of veggies. And you get more of the veggies in. I've also got some avocado on this burger in this picture. So that is a great source of healthy fats. And also a veggie with good fiber and other things as well. I think Rob's got a salad also there that I can just talk you through a little bit, how I'm thinking. And obviously with salads, you've got, like the base of them is usually veggies, right? But this is the wrong picture, but I can talk this through too, Rob. So here you've got like quite a standard looking plate model meal almost, except I've made like a stew with chickpeas and tomatoes. So in there already, even if I used canned tomatoes, that counts for vegetables, right? So you got your veggies in there. I've got some green beans, some spinach, counts for greens, counts for veggies. Then you got some rice and more beans in there. So I mean, these meals are quite standard on a vegan diet. They're really yummy, and they sort of hit all the bases. And something that's really important on a vegan diet is dark leafy greens. They contain a lot of good minerals like iron, and which you need on a vegan diet as much as on any diet. And that's not something that's really abundant in vegan food. So it's important to get your leafy greens in. And then if we can see the salad, maybe if Rob can find it. So going back to talking about salads, obviously you think of salads, you have like the base of veggies. And again, we come back to choosing your greens. It's pretty cool to choose some dark leafy greens also for your salad. So go for like rocket spinach, beet greens, or like baby greens. But if you like crunchy lettuce, which I definitely do, like romaine or iceberg, I like to like mix the two. So I have some of the crunchy, but I also have the goodness of dark leafy greens. So with the salad here, I obviously have my greens, and then I have my roasted veggies, which bring more veggies and more colors. And when it comes to colors, it's good because different colors sort of indicate different types of micronutrients. So you'll have a different variety of vitamins usually in orange food in comparison to green food, for example, and both are really important. And obviously try to involve many different colors in your diet. It doesn't hurt. And then I've got some seeds on here, which are also obviously great for healthy fats and also for protein. And I've got my lentils, which are great for the protein portion. But obviously with the salad, there's no whole grains here. So you could sprinkle on some cooked whole grains, but you could also eat this with a side of whole grain bread, maybe with some hummus on to get more of the plant proteins in, and also your whole grain source. So, on your plate, everything doesn't always have to be on your plate. You can also have sort of things on the side that complement the meal to make sure you're getting all the goodness. But like I said before, also don't worry if you're not balancing every meal perfectly. You will over time. Cool. Let's move on. So, yeah, we touched a little bit on omega-3 and fats, but I want to say that, I think in the vegan community, fats can sometimes get a bad rap. And I think in the dieting community, it's either you think fats are really bad for you or carbs are really bad for you. And I don't think either are bad for you. I'm actually pretty sure that neither are bad for you. We need these three sources. We need carbs, we need protein, we need fats. They are essential in our bodies. Then where you get them from is another question. And there can be a lot of debating around oil, for example, in the vegan community. And I eat oils. I try to choose them with care, but I do eat them. And one thing that's really important to think about, I think, when it comes to fats is that they carry flavor. So they will aid you in your cooking to make sure that there's flavor in your food and that gets carried through your dishes. And yeah, it's something we need. So don't be scared of fats. But obviously be mindful of your choices, like with everything else. And when it comes to omega-3 rich foods in a vegan diet, you have, like I said, milled flaxseed. Walnuts are good too. And there are now really great vegan supplements for omega-3 made from algae. So if you're not taking this might be an idea if you're a new vegan to check out some of these supplements if you feel like you're not eating these kind of nuts and seeds on a daily basis. I take it a couple of times a week just to cover my bases, but I also like to include a tablespoon of milled flaxseed on my breakfast pretty much every day, or I try to get it in every day. That's really great, both on breakfast bowls, sweet breakfast bowls, or in smoothies. But if you eat savory breakfasts, maybe you don't eat this so much, then it could be a good idea to take a supplement. And I want to talk a little bit more about supplements, but I also want to say that there are many ways of having a vegan diet or eating. There are many ways of eating as a vegan, and none of them are right or wrong. You decide for yourself, right? But I hope that this talking a little bit about how you can think about your meals and the different components that are good to include in your diet will be helpful to you, that they will help inform how you can put together a meal, and then combining what I've been talking about flavor and texture with this other side where you have the plate model and the sort of 5 pillars of the 5 food groups in the whole food, vegan whole foods group that I was talking about, like trying to find ways of combining all of these things in meals that you think are yummy. And I have lots of recipes on my website if you need some inspiration. It's goodeatings.com. And I try to think of these things, but use your knowledge now. And like if you see some of my recipes, like I'll take as an example the chili we made last week. I mean, there were no whole grains there were no greens. There were a good amount of veggies from the tomato and from the butternut squash. There was lentils for good plant protein and black beans as well. But like to make that more of a complete, well-rounded meal, maybe you wanted to serve it over some grains or eat it with some whole grain bread. And also you could have cooked in some spinach for greens, or you could have cooked in some kale in there for more greens, or you could have had a side salad, which would have been great as well. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. And I want to talk a little bit about supplements on a vegan diet, because it can be, or some of them are really important, and it can be important depending on who you are and how you eat. So obviously I've mentioned B12 is important for all vegans to eat. I can't stress this enough. I went, I think, a year and a half before I started taking B12 supplements. And that's not the end of the world, because our bodies can store B12, but it's very important for your nervous system. And yeah, you need B12 and you need to take it either in a spray or in a pill. You can choose. Then we have omega-3, which we talked about as well, and the vegan ones are made from algae. And then we have iodine, which I've also touched upon. You can have it in your fortified salt, in other fortified products, or in sea vegetables, which are also great for other minerals. So they're a really great thing to work into a vegan diet, even though obviously they're more common in certain cultures. And definitely as a Swede, we don't really eat sea vegetables in our traditional cuisine. But yeah, they're great if you're cooking Japanese food, for example. You can definitely work in some seaweed into those kinds of dishes. Then we have vitamin D, and I wanted to bring this up. Like I said before, vitamin D is not just important for vegans, it's important for everyone, especially if we don't have exposure to sunlight on a daily basis, which is where we get most of our vitamin D from anyways. But not all vitamin D supplements are vegan. So you just need to make sure that your bottle says that it's a vegan supplement, because they get vitamin D from sheep's wool, I think, or they derive it from sheep, and obviously that's not vegan. So make sure that you get a vegan version. And I also want to just mention iron, because iron is something that a lot of people are deficient in, actually, not just vegans, but women especially can struggle with having enough iron. I'm one of those people. I've had low iron since before I was vegan, and you might need to supplement this. You can definitely focus in on eating iron-rich vegan foods. And there you have like dark leafy greens, you have whole grains and beans and legumes that contain good amounts of minerals. And some dried fruits are also rich in iron, like dried apricots and prunes. So if you want to boost your meals with iron, these are the types of foods you should focus on. So that's a little bit about supplements. And then I have some questions and suggested topics that I got from some of you guys that I thought we'd cover before, to round this off. And then I'll check again if there are some questions. So if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. I hope you're enjoying this. This is a little bit different from last week's cook along, but let's hop into the questions and suggested topics. I've written them down. So a lovely lady on Instagram is wondering, what do I think of the daily dozen for beginner vegans? And for those of you who don't know what the daily dozen is, it's a concept that a doctor called Michael Greger came up with, where there's a list of a dozen daily essentials, basically, that you should have on a vegan diet. To sort of optimize nutrition on a vegan diet. And I think on one hand, there's an app also, by the way, where you can like check boxes for the different food groups that he's recommending. For example, there's whole grains, there's beans, there's fruits, there's vegetables, there's cruciferous vegetables. There's like a list of different things. So if you want to check it out, you can. Anyways, what I think about it. On one hand, I think it's good because it gives an idea of what kind of foods we can eat to sort of maximize our health on a vegan diet, and to make sure that we get a good amount of nutrients, basically, all the nutrients we can from a vegan diet. I think that possibly this concept and this app can be a little bit overwhelming for beginners, maybe, because there's a lot of portions on different things that you need to work into your diet if you're following this protocol. And when you're a new vegan, maybe you don't know how to cook with all these things yet. Maybe you don't really know how to cook with whole grains. You don't really know what to do with the beans. And it can become stressful if you need to have, like 3 servings of beans per day. Or I shouldn't just say beans. He includes tofu and tempeh in this category as well. But anyways, I think that's one aspect to it, that it could potentially be a little bit stressful if you're not used to vegan cooking and you don't quite know how to work all of this out in your kitchen. And I also want to say that with the recommendations on there and with the portion sizes and the categories, it can be quite a fiber, or it's definitely a very fiber-rich way of eating. And for new vegans, this can be a little bit overwhelming, the amount of fiber that you get from a very healthy vegan diet if you really go for the whole grains and the beans and the veggies and fruits. So I think for new vegans, it might be an idea to sort of work your way up to these 3 servings of beans, for example, or these servings of whole grains. And maybe in the beginning, you need to eat some white rice and a little bit more tofu, things like that, to get used to the fiber content. Because some people will find that their tummies are like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And they feel overwhelmed, bloated, gassy, whatever you want to call it. You need to go to the toilet like 5 times a day. And it might be a little bit overwhelming. So I think it's a great app for understanding how to optimize nutrition on a vegan diet, but might be a little bit overwhelming for some to begin with. Anyways, moving on. Someone's wondering, or Louisa asked me about fake meats and why substitute things like that when we can eat whole foods. And I think whole foods are great. Like I've said, I center my diet around whole foods, but that doesn't mean I don't eat fake meats, or we should call them meat substitutes, products that I buy, in the freezer section or in the fridge section of my supermarket, that people have made for me to be able to have the experience of meaty texture and flavor as a vegan. And I think that meat substitutes are important because many vegans don't change their diets, or if you're a vegan, you care about animals, right? And you care about ending the suffering of animals. But that doesn't mean that you don't like the taste of meat or the texture. And for this reason, I think meat substitutes are really important in the market, that they exist, because they make it easier for people to go vegan. You don't feel that you're missing out on taste or flavor or texture. And food is a lot about tradition. It's a lot about comfort, and there are many sort of aspects to food. And for this reason, I think that meat substitutes are important. Then we had a little question about nutritional yeast. So for those of you who don't know what nutritional yeast is, it's a type of inactive yeast that you can sort of sprinkle over your food. You can use it in sauces, dressings, and other kinds of dishes. And usually it's described as a little bit of a cheesy flavor. And it's great to use if you want to make like a vegan mac and cheese. You include it with some other ingredients to make sort of cheesy sauce, for example. And first of all, I want to say that, if you don't like nutritional yeast, you don't have to. It's totally cool. Not everyone needs to like everything. That's just natural. If you don't like it, you don't need to eat it. But some brands can taste a little bit different. I mean, it's still nutritional yeast, so probably tastes pretty much the same, but you can try different brands. But also maybe you want to try incorporating it in sauces or dressings or things like that, rather than sprinkling it over your food, to see what it can do for you in terms of cooking or emulating some sort of flavors, like in the mac and cheese, for example. It doesn't need to be eaten, with a spoon. It can do so much more when you combine it with other foods. And then someone was asking again what my favorite veggies are. And I spoke about this a little bit in the last live stream, so sorry if you saw that, but I just touch on it a little bit briefly. And I like pretty much all veggies. There are a couple that don't gel with me, like okra, but otherwise I pretty much like all of them. And like I've said before in this live stream, I think variety is the spice of life. Enjoy the different foods that are available to you. And like I've also said several times, is to think about what's in season. And I think this informs a lot about what I eat, but also what I'm enjoying. And I enjoy different things in the summer to what I enjoy in the winter. And different things taste better different times of the year, depending on when they're in season. For example, tomatoes here in Sweden right now usually come from the Netherlands or somewhere like that, grown in a greenhouse, and they don't taste much of anything. So I definitely prefer tomatoes, for example, in the summer, and enjoy more like your root veggies in the winter when they're available from closer to me, and they have more flavor. And then I got a question that I think is really great to talk about a little bit. And the question is about how to make time for cooking sort of in the week, and how to plan for meals, and how to plan for meals in a way that you limit food waste. And I mean, everyone's week looks different, right? But usually the reason why we don't end up cooking is because we're tired. And then planning is great, obviously. And I want to say, first of all, that this week that's coming on Thursday, I will share a video with where I go grocery shopping, and I take you guys along with me, and I talk about what I usually buy and what I bought that week, and also about my pantry staples. And I also talk a little bit about how Rob and I plan our meals and what we think about when we go shopping, to make sure that it works out well. But I also wanted to say that, like, one important thing, I think, if you want to limit food waste and prepare for your week, is to keep stock of what's in your cupboard, in your fridge already, and make sure that you keep using the things that you already have. And I think it's a good way, at least for me, has been to do weekly shops rather than going and shopping a little bit here and a little bit there. And I mean, now in this pandemic, I think most of us are doing this anyway, but it can really help to sort of sit down on one day on the weekend maybe, or whenever you're free, to sort of plan some of the meals that you want to have, or all of the meals that you want to have, checking your pantry, writing a list of meals that you're going to make, and then going to shop, once for the week instead of going several times. And this will save you time as well. And when you make a plan, I think it's important to be realistic. Don't only plan like really grand meals with lots of different components. If you know that you're tired in the evenings and you don't often feel like cooking, try to plan meals then that are easier for you. And then like a couple of meals that are more advanced or elaborate that you can do on the weekend, for example, when you have more time. So try to be realistic with yourself. And another thing that I think is really cool is meal prepping. if you feel that you don't have a lot of time to be cooking, to take like an hour or 2 hours when you're free, if it's on the weekend or in the week, it doesn't really matter, or one evening when you have especially lots of energy, do it then. But that's good to do. Like usually it can be an idea to, if you do like weekly shops, to do your meal prepping straight away when you come home. And meal prepping can be different things for different people. For some people, it's just like chopping all the veggies and putting them in containers so that everything's like ready and easy to cook with. Or it can be that you make certain components, like you make some hummus, you make some different salads, you make, you prep some greens, that you have different components that you can combine in different ways throughout the week. Maybe that you prep the components that you need for like lunches, for example, and then you cook your dinners on a daily basis or something like that. Depends on you and what you like. Or some people like to meal prep the whole week's worth of meals, and then maybe you're going to be eating like the same meals several times. Some people don't like that. Some people are fine with it, but it's like finding what suits you. But I think meal prepping is a great idea if you're finding that you're not quite finding the time to cook in the week. Just take that like 1-2 hours out somewhere and do a bunch of stuff so you don't have to think about it as much throughout the week. And when it comes to like, minimizing food waste, it's also really great to plan in this kind of way and shop just the things that you're going to use. Because if we're going to the supermarket without a plan, or the market for that matter without a plan, then we just buy random stuff, and it's very easy that some veggies just end up lying in the fridge and never really get used, and we throw them out. But if you have a plan, then you're buying the things that you're actually going to use. And it can also be good to buy just the amount that you're actually going to use, especially with veggies. And another thing to think about if you want to minimize waste is maybe that if you planned many different meals that you're going to make, you go to the shop, you come home. In the first few days, eat the meals that you've planned that have veggies that could go off faster. Like if you're planning to do things with a lot of salady stuff, over like root vegetables, for example, maybe do those closer to when you shopped and save the meals with the more hearty veg for later on in the week. And also, if you don't want to waste, it's also very good to stick to the plan you make, because if you end up getting a lot of takeaways, then food ends up sitting in the fridge for a long time. So it's good to try and stick to the plan. It doesn't always happen, not in this house, I can tell you, but we can all try, right? So those were the things that I have in my little cheat sheet. And I hope this was helpful to you. I'm going to just check what's happening in the chat now, see if I can answer some questions, see where we're at. I'll start at the bottom this time. So Klaus is telling us that a good tip for planning is to bulk cook beans. I agree. I think like cartoned canned beans are great as well. If you don't have a lot of time, you don't need to cook them yourself, but cooking your own beans is really great if you have the time, and it's definitely cheaper as well. What do you recommend to cook when you are too tired to cook? Do I ever make crockpot meals? I actually don't have a crockpot. I would love one, or an instant pot. Maybe in the future, Rob and I will invest in one. I don't quite know where we'd put it because I feel like we have too much stuff already. But it seems like a really great thing to use. Obviously, it works a bit like a pressure cooker as far as I understand. And that's also great if you bulk cooking beans yourself, is to use a pressure cooker or instant pot crockpot. Meals when you are tired, I think sandwiches are great. If you always keep some hummus and some veggies in your fridge and some good whole grain bread or whatever bread you enjoy, doesn't have to be so perfect, like I said, then sandwiches are a satisfying, easy meal. I also think it can be a good idea to keep some like soups and stuff in your freezer or in your fridge for those days when you're not feeling standing in the kitchen and cooking up stuff. Stir fries, I think, are really easy to cook, especially if you have some already pre-chopped veggies. I think it's pretty quick and easy, especially if you're using noodles that really don't take long to cook. Spaghetti with ready-made pesto. Not all pesto is vegan though, so just check that it doesn't contain cheese when you're buying your pesto in the shop. Things like that, I would say, are like our go-to lazy meals. Sorry, I'm just reading. Lots of nice comments about different meals. Julietta is saying to grind your nuts and seeds. I think that's cool, but I'm thinking also that we chew them, so we're not swallowing them whole. But when it comes to small seeds like flax seeds, definitely good to grind them up to get the nutrients in them, because we don't, it's hard to chew those little tiny things. Ahmet is wondering if I could talk about vegan probiotics. And I can for sure. So probiotics, either you can take them as a supplement, and then you have to look for brands that make vegan supplements, or you can get them in your foods. And probiotics exist in fermented foods. So you have sauerkraut, you have kimchi, you have miso paste, now my head's standing still, kombucha. All fermented foods contain live bacteria. And when it comes to probiotics as well, probiotics obviously exist in your gut. They are bacteria, living bacteria in your gut. And we can feed our gut bacteria as well. And they like fiber. So a vegan diet is usually good for maintaining a good flora in your tummy. Yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. Yeah, so the prebiotic, it's called, the things that probiotics, the bacteria, eat. And often things like sauerkraut are obviously made from cabbage, which can feed the bacteria. So you got both a prebiotic and a probiotic when you're eating things like sauerkraut or kimchi. I hope that made sense. But it's a great idea to incorporate some fermented foods in your diet. They are yummy, they add lots of like complex flavors to your food, and also they're healthy for you. Sorry, I'm just reading now. I hope you're not bored. Okay, so Karen is wondering if I could talk a bit about my favorite vegan proteins. And I'd say that we mix it up a lot. We eat a lot of beans and lentils in different ways, but we also like tofu. And we eat quite a lot of tofu, and we like tempeh. I don't eat tempeh as often, but I think it's a really interesting food that I want to incorporate more. And that's also a fermented food, tempeh. It's a fermented bean product, often made from soybeans, but can be made from other beans as well, and even from grains. And I think there are some companies, at least here in Sweden now, that are coming out and doing more things with tempeh. If you live in Sweden, Ärtan Berta is a really cool company that make yummy burgers that you buy in the freezer section, made from tempeh, marinated, and ready to just cook up really easy. But yeah, I like to make things with a lot of different things, I guess. I don't quite know what to say about it. I think one thing that sometimes we do is like if you make your own hummus, you can definitely make it from different types of beans, or yeah, it doesn't have to be this like creamy white color either. You can make it funky looking by using black beans, for example. It tastes great, looks a bit funny, but you can definitely switch it up like this. And yeah, I like to just get a variety in. And obviously with lentils, different lentils are good for different things. Like for salads and things like that, I love poi lentils, like the green, small green lentils, or beluga lentils, because they keep their shape really well. Green lentils also do this, and brown lentils to some extent. But if I'm using them in soup, for example, I'd go for a split red lentil or a split yellow lentil that sort of cook into this like creamy, lovely texture. That's also good in chili. Last week I did the green lentil chili though, so if you want more bite, I'd go for that. And I think also trying to cook foods from like different cultures has really helped me discover different types of plant protein. Like when I'm making different kind of Southeast Asian dishes, I like to use tofu or tempeh. And then when I'm at Japanese food as well, or when I'm making like Mexican-inspired foods, I go for black beans and other types of beans and lentils. Or yeah, I don't know quite where I'm going with this, but I think it's a good idea to like and get inspired by different cultures and seeing how you can use the different vegan protein sources in different types of foods. I hope that made sense. Let's see if there are some more questions. So let's just, I want to come back to this whole thing about like crushing seeds or not again, because to talk about nutrition, I mean, there are many like aspects to nutrition as well, right? So eating whole flax seeds or chia seeds will give you like this gelatinous fiber that can be really good for you. Obviously, fiber is great. And that's good for you on one hand. And if you mill them, then you can absorb more of the nutrients that is within the whole seed, right? So there you can do both, and they will be good in different ways. You're being very nice about my photos. I'm glad you like them. Okay, I think I've covered the questions now. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. It was maybe a little bit disjointed at times. I tried my best to keep it together. And I also forgot to say that I am not a nutritionist, but I did a health coaching course. I am a certified health coach. I can't get her words together always. I don't practice health coaching, but I did study basic nutrition. So I feel quite confident in speaking about some of these things, or all of these things that I have been talking about today. But obviously, go out and seek nutritional advice from professional practitioners if you feel the need to. There are also books you can read about vegan nutrition. I don't know the names of them at the top of my head, but I wrote it down in a Q&A that you can find in my story highlights on Good Eatings. On Instagram, sorry, at Good Eatings is my name there. Yeah, there are plenty of good sources online as well. So check them out for more information. All right. I'm going to leave you for today. Thanks so much for joining. It's been really lovely. And next Sunday, we're doing a new cook along. I haven't quite decided what to make yet, so feel free to comment on this in the chat if you want to, if you have some wishes for what we should make. I hope you will join me and cook along, or just come along to hang out. And yeah, we have 2 lives left for this month, and then we'll see. I'm thinking that maybe in the future we can do like 1 live a month, 1 live cook along a month, because I'm really enjoying this forum where I have this instant connection with you guys. I hope you enjoy it too. And yeah, thank you all so much. I look forward to seeing you first on Thursday with a new video and then next Sunday for a live cook along. So take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.